We are now just hours away from the Trump administration enacting some of the highest tariffs since the Great Depression. In fact, I believe they are higher than the ones enacted during the Great Depression. I don't think anybody really knows what effect they'll have. I suspect people are underestimating what effect they'll have for a few reasons. So, first, for anybody watching this in the future, you come across this Liberation Day. This was what, Wednesday? Trump announces some of the biggest tariffs possible. He used a methodology that was completely crazy, had nothing to do with what tariffs other countries were charging us, but basically just decided to focus on essentially trade deficits and charging tariffs that are extraordinarily high. He's been saying it when he was running for president. People didn't take him seriously. I did actually. So much so that I actually sold a lot of my stocks and moved a lot of my positions into gold and other securities that are safe and more recession proof because when someone tells you who they are, believe them. But there are more important things I want to talk about, and I guess that's the impact of the tariffs, but also how we got here. So, as I mentioned, the tariffs are going to be really high, and I think people don't quite understand the impact they're going to have. I believe they will lead to shortages because it's just not going to be economical to ship some items from, for example, China that's being levied with a 104% tariff. That means anything coming into the United States will literally cost more than twice as much. Somebody's going to have to pay twice as much because of those tariffs. And so, why would you buy it? Now, it takes about 13 to 14 days on average for shipping containers to come from China to the United States. So, okay, maybe some are on the way, and presumably they'll pay the tariffs and then start selling. But I think a lot of companies are going to say, you know what, it's just not worth it. It'll take time for them to find other sources. They're not maybe there may not be other sources for some products. So I think the prices are going to be passed on to the consumers fairly quickly. And I do expect a recession. I just hope it's a mild one and a short-lived one. I worry that it might be much worse, and it might lead, as many trade wars do, to war, as if we don't have enough of those nowadays. Just listening to a segment of Fox by Jesse Waters, and he's just going all in on this. Upending 200 years of economic theory, there is no economic paper or textbook or anything that is even remotely credible that says tariffs are good. Some people have been trying to make the argument that, well, in some isolated incidents, national security, protecting infant industries, they might be okay. But this is so far above and beyond any of that that it doesn't even make sense to mention them. Now, the Republican Party is split. The ones who know better and who are not afraid to speak out, and there's very few. I have to give it to Ben Shapiro on this one. He did speak out, are basically saying this is the wrong way to go about it. Elon Musk has been speaking out to some extent. He hasn't been directly going against Trump, but it's clear that he believes in free trade. It seems like, you know, you'd have to be an idiot not to, but here we are. So, price increases, shortages. Is there a chance it might not happen? Yes, there's a chance, but it's hard to see how it won't happen. Now, people are saying it's going to make trade deals. First, you don't need to make these trade deals. The weighted average tariff rate on U.S. exporters was 1 to 2% prior to Trump tariffs, and that includes from his first term. There was nothing to fix. 1 to 2% was the average tariff rate that U.S. exporters were paying. Now, okay, fine, maybe you want to try to pick some very isolated industries where the tariffs were significantly higher and you can negotiate them. That's fine, okay? And if you want to raise tariffs so then you can lower them later, that's one approach to do it. But if you've heard Trump speak, he believes in tariffs. I mean, this is one of the few things he actually believes in. He doesn't believe in abortion. He doesn't believe in the Second Amendment. I mean, he really doesn't believe in much, except he does believe in tariffs. He's been talking about him for 40 years. And this is now his chance to prove everybody he's right. He's answerable to almost no one. So we'll see how long Republicans stick around with him and how much pain they're willing to bear. Hopefully, for the sake of America. I mean, this is such a bad road to go down. Hopefully, for the sake of America, it won't be as bad and it won't be as painful. But I've been thinking for a long time, why are we buying into Trump? What he says. There are just so many things he does on a regular basis that if anybody else was to do in the past, it would be just game over. Just again with the tariffs, he puts out a board and blatantly lies about what other countries are charging us. Yeah, his approval rating is dropping, but it's that down will fall below 44%. Puts tariffs on uninhabited islands where no people live. No blowback, not really. I mean, it's become a meme. And so why? He golfs while the stock market crashes. On the right, still silence. And I was thinking, and I think it's because our collective memory is has forgotten a lot of the things that we used to value. Now, that sounds a bit cliche, but I think there's some truth to that. So I'll start with institutions, respecting our institutions. We don't respect the UN, and the UN has problems. We don't respect the World Trade Organization. Sure, there are things that can be improved there, but I actually think the World Trade Organization is one of the best institutions out there, and I can't think of anything off the top of my head that can be improved. I'm sure there are things as there is with anything. We don't respect, not just international organizations, but also domestic institutions. Trump is defying court orders, taking migrants based on their tattoos, flying them out to El Salvadoran prisons that are notoriously difficult and subjugate their prisoners to torture. Now, I'm sure that even the Trump administration has told them not to torture those prisoners, but they're still probably living in difficult conditions. So why do we stand for it? There were some protests recently, and I'm going to an event tomorrow. I said that I will try to protest as much as I can, realistically, from here on out. But why does a big part of the country just kind of shrug? Again, it goes back to why he even had a chance the second time around. He calls up a Georgian state official and tells him to change the vote tallies. We just shrug. Okay. And I've come to the realization that he didn't win because the Biden administration was so bad and the state of the economy was so bad and society was so bad. Quite the opposite. It's what nobody will tell you because it's such an unpopular thing to say, but Trump won because things were actually quite good. And they have been for some time now. In fact, a lot of the things you hear about these tariffs, oh, the middle class has been hollowed out. They ship the jobs overseas. That doesn't stand up to scrutiny on any metric. First, I do believe we're manufacturing more today than we did 40 years ago. Less people are in manufacturing relative to the population. That doesn't mean that manufacturing has decreased. It is true we've transitioned to more of a service economy. But even as Ben Shapiro said, the middle class wasn't hollowed out. A big part of the middle class has moved up to the upper class. Not the upper class, but the upper middle class, I should say. So by almost any metric, we are better off today than we were back then. I think there's this idea that, you could make a nice living. I saw this recently on X. One job, could have a family, support a family, have a car, live in a nice neighborhood, suburban house. One job working at a factory. That wasn't the case for many people. Women couldn't do that. A lot of minorities couldn't do that. And quite frankly, unless you were in manufacturing at some of the better organized plants, even most white men couldn't do that. It was always a struggle to survive. And so, yes, after World War II, the United States has a big monopoly, having come out essentially undamaged as far as destruction of property goes. And so it had almost a monopoly in terms of manufacturing and export and just being able to export its products to the rest of the world. Everybody, and then, things changed. Europe got back up on its feet, then Asia got back up on its feet. And so yes, it is in some cases things have changed somewhat. There's more competition worldwide, but the United States and the people in the United States are not worse off. Stop saying it. That's the other thing. There's another argument that I keep hearing about tariffs that I just despise. How does the argument go? Oh, yes, we've been taken advantage of. Who has been taken advantage of the United States? Who? Because if I'm an American importer, I don't want tariffs. So it's not the people that are shipping me their products that are taking advantage of me. It's now the Trump administration by raising the tariff. Is it the exporter who's being taken advantage of? Well, let's say I'm an exporter. Let's say I'm exporting, I don't know, chips or something else. It doesn't matter. I go out and I see, do I have any buyers? Oh, there's somebody in South Africa. There's a 10% tariff. It's not 10%. But let's say there was a really high tariff. 10%, by the way, is a huge tariff, which is why what's going to happen is going to be, in my opinion, devastating economically. But nonetheless, let's say it was a 10% tariff on chips. And I think to myself, is it worth it or not? Am I being taken advantage of? No. It is a contractual, voluntary relationship that I'm entering into. Nobody taking advantage of me. So who then is taking advantage of the United States? Oh, it's the countries that are setting the tariff rates. You know who they're taking advantage of? Their people, by limiting their options, raising their prices, decreasing employment. Of course, another problem is that the far left has always been, or they have always found tariffs appealing. So listening to Elizabeth Warren talking about tariffs. Oh, I always thought the tariffs, they're not so bad if they're used the right way. And I'm not trying to mock her. I shouldn't mock her. It's a serious subject. But when you are saying that, there is almost no good excuse for tariffs. I don't even buy the exceptions that sometimes economists will say about national security or trying to protect infant industries. That's the worst excuse, by the way. It never works out. It almost never works out. And it costs a lot of times far more than it's worth. Or trying to restructure it, because even if the other guy is charging you a massive tariff, you're still better off not raising your own tariffs. And so, what I suspect will happen, here's my prediction. Tomorrow, the tariffs go into effect. You'll see stories about price increases. Those won't be hard to find. It'll take a while for it to show up in the inflation index. I believe inflation will hit 5% by the end of the year. If nothing changes, nothing substantial changes. Stock market will probably continue to fluctuate, but I don't think it's going to get back to the same level it was this year. Trump, I think, will sooner or later realize that he's in a lot of economic trouble, and his party's going to start speaking out. There's a chance the courts will take up his authority to issue tariffs under the Emergency Authority, National Security Authority. And I think there's a good chance they'll strike it down, because if there's too much pain, I think this will be a good way out. He blames the courts. But it hasn't happened yet. But I think actually there's a good chance of that. So if I had to put my money on something happening, I think that might be it. But if that doesn't happen, or if the courts say it's okay, well, then I think that in the next few weeks, you have to understand Trump believes in the tariff. Even if they go to zero, which many of them were at effectively, because we had free trade agreements that we just tore up and threw away. Sooner or later, I think, due to pressure from both his advisors, media, business people, everybody who supported him, by the way. I mean, what were you expecting? This is why. Because the problem was that Trump, people thought they could control him, use him. In fact, everybody thinks they can use Trump because he's so simple-minded, so transactional. But what I keep saying to people like Ben Shapiro, you can't use him. Stop trying to use him like some kind of vessel. Because the monster that you've created is going to eat you. And I've said this for so long to so many people. And no, we're going to try to guide him towards what we believe in and keep him away from his worst instinct. It doesn't work like that. It never has. He has a mind of his own. And he gets power drunk. And he loves to use the power to prove everybody wrong. And he now only trusts his instincts. And his instincts have led him to the presidency twice. So he's not going to back down. It's going to take him a lot and a long time to back away from something that can go horribly wrong. But I do believe in the next week or so, maybe two, we'll probably strike some deals. South Korea, Japan, Vietnam. I mean, some of those tariff rates are just astronomically high, but I don't think he'll bring them down to zero. He believes in the tariff. So I think best case scenario is that you have a 10% tariff across the board, some paying more. And that is also not very good for the American economy. But that's something that I think it can survive, depending on what some of the countries are that are above 10. I don't think 104% of China, the biggest, next biggest economy in the world, is something that you can allow to happen for a long time without facing some very serious economic blowback. I mean, this, I think, is going to go badly very quickly. But like I said, I think he's a very stubborn, simple minded, spiteful individual. And he will hold on to this for as long as he can. I think those tariffs are here to stay for a while. I'm worried that the next administration, even if it's the Dem administration, will be too scared to take him off. I think we might be in for a very rough period of many years with very stagnant economic growth. But how do we get here? Sometimes I wonder, what, just what if Kamala just won? Would this have happened? I think it probably would have. I mean, and here's why. The reason I think ultimately why Trump won, why he quote unquote gets away with it, is because our collective memory has forgotten the lessons that our forefathers learned the hard way. Think of it like this: after World War II, the damage was astronomical. The death toll was astronomical. There was a lot of hardship. There's a lot of suffering. And when you've seen that, when you've experienced it, you're not going to elect a fool who doesn't trust the experts or science. No, you're going to get it right. You're going to elect Eisenhower because, while he's an expert, he was somebody who won the war. He believed in NATO, by the way. And he believed in free trade, as far as I remember. But more importantly, he believed in institutions. Can't mess around after World War II with somebody who's going to call election officials to and ask them to change vote tallies. Cheating on your wife? Well, no, you're not going to take that risk. Starting fake universities, stealing from charities? No, not after World War II and the Great Depression. People take that seriously. And so we built institutions to try to prevent the Great Depression and World War II. The UN. And we believe that this, while imperfect, would help stave off wars in the future. And they have. But now, we've grown complacent. It's been what? 80 years. 80 years since World War II. The vast majority of Americans Don't remember it. They weren't alive. Their parents weren't alive. Their great grandparents may not remember it. Probably don't remember it. And so that's not in our collective consciousness anymore. And so now it's like, oh, things have been kind of going the way they've been going. Let's try something new. Oh, he called up an election official and asked them to change vote tallies. Yeah, but American democracy has been around for such a long time. You know, just a sore loser. It's not going to break. You know where they're not going to elect? A clown, an unserious clown who doesn't know what he's talking about, who makes a fool out of himself, who lies, steals, just unserious. You're not going to elect somebody like that in Ukraine right now because the stakes are too high. You need somebody who knows what they're doing. A general, Zelensky, could very well be the next president. They don't have time to deal with in lies and pseudo economics. They got to get it right because the survival of their country depends on it. But now here in the United States, people just shrug. They don't, hatred and tariffs. Well, we haven't felt the effect of that yet. We'll see how that goes. That might be the first real suffering, unnecessary suffering that we haven't felt for a long time. I'll note that the last time we did feel some suffering, and it was significant, the COVID. Several million dead. Economy, highly, highly unpredictable, uncertain, unstable at times. And who do we elect? We elected somebody who we thought, and quite frankly, I thought he did a good job and knew what he was doing. Joe Biden. Make a note of that. Things going well. We don't want the neoliberal elite. We're tired of them. Trump, he's kind of funny. Let's give him a chance. I mean, yeah, he lies, he says stuff that's not appropriate, but he's just saying things. So, I mean, what can go wrong? Let's give him a chance. Oh, COVID? Okay, time to get serious. Time to get serious. Let's elect somebody real. Oh, COVID's gone. Oh, we're back to where we were before. Oh, okay, so no real threats. Everything kind of going the way it's always been going. Okay, well, in that case, maybe we'll give Trump a chance. Let's see what he can do. He says he can win the war in 24 hours. I doubt that, but maybe, who knows? He wants to try some tariffs. Okay, what can go wrong? Haven't tried that in a while. And so we do this because, again, I think our collective consciousness has forgotten those hard-learned lessons. And I feel like these lessons, we almost have to learn them every 100 years or so. So it stays in our collective consciousness because we don't read. We don't watch movies that matter. We just kind of go from one day to the next on TikTok or Instagram. Oh, yeah, okay, tariffs, sure. I heard they're not so good, but why not? Give it a try. Things have been going the same way for as long as I can remember. Romney, McCain, Obama, they're all the same. Hillary, Trump a little different. Yeah, the problem, as I may have mentioned, is that if this goes really wrong, there's so many ways it can go really wrong. And I will list those ways right now. Scenario one. I listed the best case scenario. 10% tariffs across the board and the mild recession. I think that is the best case scenario. Worst case scenarios. Scenario number one. He continues with the tariffs and he makes very few deals, still essentially continues. What people don't realize is it's not just about us anymore. You put those tariffs on the biggest economy in the world, that is going to hurt other nations. They go into a recession, we're also going to be impacted, and that increases the likelihood of us going into a recession. China goes into a recession, we're probably going to go into a recession. So even if we somehow make it, that ain't gonna, that might not even matter. But worst case scenario, continues with these tariffs. And as I mentioned, shortages, inflation, they all come back. Very painful. Unemployment. And he decides to stick to his guns, as I assume he will for a very long time. And I guess best case scenario is that somebody puts these tariffs, forces him to take him away. Now the courts have to step in. The courts, because even if Congress decides to act, he can still veto it. And I don't know if they got enough to overturn the veto, maybe, if things get real bad. So I think the courts would have to stop it, which again, I'm optimistic. But if they don't, trade wars, like I said, oftentimes lead to real wars. I'll give you an example. China's economy crashes, and they're pissed off. They might decide to just go for Taiwan to appease their population that might be angry at the economic collapse. Our economy collapses. Trump might try to deflect attention by going for Greenland. He's already talked about it. The Great Depression, I believe, was the spark. No, I'd say it was the root cause of the World War, Second World War. So that's the one. That's the worst case scenario. Just conflict, war, more war. Other bad scenarios, and they can all happen at the same time too. After imposing these tariffs and seeing how bad the economy is getting, how it's starting to struggle, Trump decides to what he usually does is double down. Tries to go as fast as he can while he still has political capital. And what do I mean by that now? Well, the court tells him to stop. He says no, as he's come very close to doing. And I'd argue he has already done. But now he just blatantly says that. The difference is right now he hasn't said he disregarded the order, but sooner or later, if the situation gets bad enough, he might just start saying what Andrew Jackson said, the most overrated president. Okay, courts, you made your decision. Now enforce it. And so he decides to try to consolidate control before he's thrown out of office. He's already banned the AP press from his White House briefings. Okay, not, I guess, the same thing as arresting journalists, but he's been going after law firms who've been rolling over. God knows why. Mass demonstrations around the White House. Him calling in the National Guard or whoever to try to put him down. I mean, this is Trump 1.0. I mean, things were kind of getting close to that at times. At that point, things get really bad. I do think JD Vance takes over, and as much as I hate that, man, at least he can rub two brain cells together and realize that tariffs aren't good. I mean, JD Vance, well, he's extraordinarily politically power hungry. He knows how to read a basic economic theory, or to understand it at least. And so, in some ways, I don't think he's the dictator type, to be honest. So sooner or later, maybe he steps in with the support of the Republican Party. But Trump ain't gonna go down easy. In some ways, he's a coward. He doesn't fire people face to face. He fires them over tweet. When it really comes down to it, he is a coward. But as long as he thinks he's got support, he's gonna act and play tough. Not to mention, he can always pardon himself. So that's the other risk. Number one, war. Number two, autocracy. Political and domestic and societal instability. Also, other predictions. I believe that this will split the world now into different different spheres of influence, I guess. What do you call it? It's going to be a multipolar world. Exactly what Putin wanted. And to a lesser extent, Xi. I think Xi wanted bipolar. Europe, the EU will probably rise because, well, they can. And now they're starting to. China will, of course, be one of the multipolar powers. I doubt Russia will be at this point. I feel like they'll be in China's. And so that's probably where we'll be in a couple of years from now. I mean, it's so hard to see where all this is going. He levied so many tariffs in so many countries, it is hard to see how he gets out of this. I guess, like I said, maybe he'll make quote unquote deals with the ones that he raised biggest deals. I know I wanted him to go down, but not like this. Not like this. He needs to be impeached. Again, the midterms won't come fast enough, but even if they do, the Democrats, I don't think are going to take the Senate, no matter how bad it gets. We're in such a polarized time that I don't even think if the economy crashes, he'll lose. He'll go below 40%, maybe 38%. What did he hit on after J6? Like 36%. I mean, it's kind of, that's a ridiculous high number considering. All right. We'll see what happens in a week or two. Good night.